So what are the problems with this implementation? The first problem is the use of magic strings here. So if I decide to change name to, let's say, title in the future, I have to update it in two places. So the first thing I want to do to make this code cleaner is to extract these magic strings and store them in a private field. Something like this. Private, constant, string. Let's call this title key and set this to name. And now I'm going to replace this name with title key. And similarly here. Now I'm going to pause the recording and apply the same refactoring to the other key. So here's the end result. All right, now if I want to change any of these keys, I only have to do it in one place. But we still have another problem. It's quite likely that I may want to use one of these settings in another page in our application. Perhaps somewhere else, I want to check if notifications are enabled or not, and if they're enabled, I want to do something. So again, I have to repeat these keys in another page. A better implementation is to move these keys into the application class. So we have a single place to work with these settings. Let me show you what I mean. First, I'm going to select these two private fields, cut, back in the application class, paste them here. Now here, I want to expose properties that represent our application settings. So I'm going to add a property for our title, public string title. In the getter, first we check if properties dictionary contains key. Now we use title key here. So if we have that object in the dictionary, we simply return it to a string. Otherwise, I'm going to return the default value for string. So just an empty string. Now for the setter, I'm going to add properties of title key and set this to value. Now I'm going to create another property for our notifications. So pretty similar. In the getter, we check if we have that object in the dictionary. If yes, we return it. Otherwise, we return false. And in the setter, we simply add that object in the dictionary. With this, we can go back to our main page and replace all these references to application.current.properties with the new properties on our application class. So first, I'm going to get application.current. Now look at the return type of this current property. It's application. We need to cast this property to app because this is the class where we have defined these custom properties. So here, application.current as app, and I store the result here. Now I can replace this with app.title. And the next one with app.notifications enabled. Now I'm going to pause the recording and apply the same update. This code is a lot cleaner than what we had previously. Plus, if I need to access any of these settings or properties on another page, I can simply get it from the application class. So we don't have to repeat these keys everywhere. And if we ever need to change them, we change them in one place. But hang on a sec, we are not done yet. We can make this code even cleaner. All we are doing here is synchronizing a property of a control on the page with a property of an object in our application. Isn't that what data binding is for? So here in the constructor, I can set binding context of this page to application.current. And now that this object is the source of our data binding, we can go to our XAML file. Look, here in the text property, we already have a binding expression, binding to title. So whatever we type here will be automatically stored in application.title, and then it will get stored. Or when the page is loaded, this entry cell is initialized with the title property of the application class. And we have a similar binding for the on property of our switch cell. And with this, we no longer need these event handlers here because data binding would do all the synchronization. Delete. Also, we don't need these xname attributes because we are not going to reference these controls in our code behind. So delete. And one more time, delete. Now back in the code behind. We don't need any of this stuff here. And we don't need the onChange event handler either. So this is all we have to do. We simply set the binding context to application.current and use data binding to bind our controls or input fields to properties of the application class. And this is the way I recommend you to use application properties. Just one thing. I made a mistake earlier when implementing this property. I forgot to put the return keyword here. And I hope you caught that earlier. Next, we're going to look at using file system to store application data.